April 3rd, 2014. I was a game producer here in Montreal and I was working on the very first Watch Dogs. And as we were wrapping up that game, I was facing a dilemma. See, finishing one game and starting a new one was always an exciting moment. New team, new gameplay, new audience, new universe. What world am I going to spend the next few years in? Except this time I was secretly dreading starting another game. I'd been a game producer for 10 years and before that an instructional designer, and for a while I'd really been thinking about going back to ID. Over 10 years, projects and teams had gotten bigger and my days had become filled less with making games and more with budgeting, scheduling, hiring, firing, politics and HR issues. Not my scene. In any big company, decisions involve layers and layers of people, and the outcome of anything you do seems to depend on thousands of factors that you don't control. And I'd been in that my whole life, even before games, but for some reason I was reaching a breaking point with all the processes. I looked at freelancers and I wanted that. I wanted the freedom to work wherever, whenever. I wanted to challenge myself and actually make things instead of just managing. I wanted to see what could be achieved without all that weight. However, I had a good salary and the mortgage that went with it. I'd invested a decade building experience in making games and I was working with the top talent in the world. Plus, this was a cool-ass job. I'd been on the set of Iron Man playing the game Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. I mean, come on. Was I really gonna leave all that behind?
Not a great plan.
So yeah, I waffled and agonized and then something totally random happened.
This is Jeopardy!
I got invited by Jeopardy, the game show, to audition to be a contestant. A few months earlier, I'd taken the online quiz and I'd kind of forgotten about it, but now I was being asked to go to Boston and take an even harder knowledge quiz and do a screen test. I was super excited and terrified because I had a month to learn everything about everything. So I thought,
I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this.
And I got to work. I researched Jeopardy Moneyball style. I got all the topics, names, dates, and places that came up most often and I counted everything up. I hit the books hard and practiced constantly and scored myself against current and past champions. And I quickly got to the point where I thought, there's gotta be an app for this. There's gotta be a game that'll teach me everything about opera. But there wasn't, and that's when it all clicked. Oh my God, I should make games for learning. I don't have to choose, I can combine games and training. So anyway, I went to Boston and auditioned, and they don't tell you if you made it on. They just say they might call. They give you a nice souvenir pen and they send you home. So that was out of my life, but the idea of striking out on my own using games for learning had taken hold and it's all I could think about. Now every HR meeting, every unnecessary process that we follow without knowing why, every constraint was driving me nuts. It started making no sense to me that I had to ask someone when I could book a day off. I had to go. It wasn't them, it was me. And that's when I made my first mistake. I felt I couldn't leave until I had all my ducks in a row. That meant months of financial survival, a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a website, a brochure, business cards, and I plugged away at all those things. I made a website and I had a few meetings with potential clients, but I still found every reason not to jump. As soon as I'd get all my ducks in a row, I'd just find more ducks. Shouldn't my website be translated to French first? I heard the economy is going to take a downturn. It never ends. I was trying to make myself feel safe leaving, but the unknown is never going to feel as safe as the known you're in. Finally, I did start with only 7 weeks of financial survival ahead of me. And as I'm sure you can imagine, all those things I had worked on in preparation, all the ducks, didn't matter. Nobody cared that I had driven out of town to get my stupid business cards printed just right. What that taught me is that delaying action in order to prepare and over-prepare is the same as procrastination. So I started the company, but having been an employee all my life, I had no idea what I was doing. So I listened to those who seemed to know. I went to networking events. I met with startup accelerators. I watched Dragon's Den, which is Canadian Shark Tank. I took free seminars on selling. This was all sound advice, but it was aimed at startups and I didn't recognize that that wasn't me. I was still afraid of going freelance because I thought that would mean I would starve. So following this startup advice meant I needed office space, employees, a business plan. And even as a freelancer, I felt I needed certifications, a master's in education, a huge portfolio, and I lost sleep over every one of those things. But very soon, a big company called for me to pitch them a training game, and then another one called, and another one. Nobody asked about my certifications or what I had studied. Nobody cared how many employees I had. They just cared about how I could help them. So I had followed advice that wasn't for me, and that set standards that I didn't actually need to reach, and that caused me worries I didn't need to have. And somewhere in the background of all that, news came out of LA.
Jeopardy is America's favorite quiz show, but they are not allowing Canadians to be part of the contestant pool.
Seems to be providing little about why Canadians can no longer compete.
You, sir, are a Canadian.
So that happened. But I was so busy getting myself off the ground that I hardly noticed. Prospects were calling, and every time one of them did, I kind of panicked because now I had to demo what I'd been pitching. I had explored some tech, but now I had to deliver. I wasn't a programmer, I wasn't an artist. What was I going to actually use to make those game demos? But this problem was different because it was real. I wasn't making it up. I had a demo to make for real people with a real deadline. And that was a gift because with real stakes and accountability, it's amazing how quickly you focus and find a way. That real goal dismissed all the crap I'd been overthinking about, and I laser focused on that objective. I tried different tools, I found the right ones, and I problem solved until I had built the demo I needed. And as more prospects came in, I just kept going through that loop of focus on their problem, solve it, and deliver over and over again. I got one client and then two more, and problem by problem, need by need, I built a useful base of demos and experience. But here's the thing, there's no way I could have planned for that. I couldn't have built those solutions before I knew the problems, and I couldn't face the real problems until I threw myself into this place of real accountability. So if I could go back, I'd face those situations as soon as possible. A little bit of business grew into a decent amount of business, but I was still in this mindset of, oh my God, what if this is all a fluke? What if all the clients dry up? So I said yes to everything. And that meant that whatever a client needed, I kind of had to morph myself into that. And that mission drift brought me into an ocean full of competitors who were all doing the same thing, but with better infrastructure than me, which meant more stress, more fear of scarcity, and more saying yes to everything. I knew how to engage people with game mechanics, and I was focused on boosting learning outcomes. That was my thing. And when that became clear to me, it became clear to everyone else. And then competitors started sending clients my way because I was in my lane now and everyone knew what my lane was. So yeah, don't obsess over what you don't have, but beyond that, when you really embrace the key thing that you do have, the thing that's different about you, that's when you become super hard to compete with. 2 years in, I was refusing business and choosing clients. I didn't recognize it then, but I had managed to get where I wanted to go. The money was better than I'd made as a game producer. I was working my own hours, and I followed JS wherever his work took him because I could work from anywhere. I had my freedom. And then Jeopardy allowed Canadians back in. I tested again. I got an audition again. I drove to Boston again. I got another pen. But this time, on March 2nd, 2020, I got the call. I was going to be a contestant on Jeopardy. I freaked and I told everyone. And then I thought, oh my God, I told everyone. What if I look like an idiot? So I went back to Moneyball mode. I got all the research back out. I trained and I practiced and I trained some more. It was 6 years later, but there still weren't any games to teach me everything. But now I could make my own, and I did. And a couple of days before I headed to Los Angeles,
the federal government revealed plans yesterday to shut down the U.S.-Canada border to non-essential travel.
Non-essential travel.
Non-essential travel.
To help slow the spread of the virus.
but the producers called and they said that they'd rebook me when the border opened again. And we all thought that was going to be a couple of weeks, but the border ended up staying closed for 19 months, so I never heard from them again. And that's the end of the Jeopardy chapter. It happened to be the trigger that got me out of my rut, but the way things were building up, if it hadn't been that, something else would have pushed me to go my own way. It was just a matter of time. And if you're in that state right now, I hope my wrong turns can help you a little bit. I'm not saying that the freelance path is for everyone, but I know a lot of us lose time hesitating and lose sleep worrying about possible obstacles instead of real ones. Whatever your thing is, it's only when you take action that you see what the actual obstacles are in your way, and that's okay because then you can deal with it and grow from it. I never got to be on Jeopardy, but I got what I was looking for. Plus, I still have some unused tickets to LA and not one, but two very cool pens. Thanks for listening.